Welcome back to Man vs. Weed, the cannabis review podcast with variable levels of potency. I'm your host, Tango Hotel Charlie. Thanks for joining me again for episode 25. The smoke and ash from wildfire has been better lately. We've had some cooler temperatures and rain. We're not quite out of the woods yet, but we're in a much better place. There are still hot spots underground and whatnot, so folks are still on edge. That Northern Lights auto is now all harvested. It's been hang drying for about a week now, and it'll have me in trim jail in the next few days. Those other two strange ones are still flowering, so I'm continuing to feed them mild flowering newts, and keeping an eye on them. They're now 12 and a half weeks old. It's going to be fall soon. Now, as you know, today's sample is Blue Dream by Pure Sunfarms. Pure Sunfarms was started in 2017 in a 50-50 joint partnership between Village Farms and Green Emerald Health Therapeutics. In 2018, Mandesh Dosanjh used his job as an LCBO vice president to springboard into the position of CEO of Pure Sunfarms. And by 2020, Village Farms would own 100% of Pure Sunfarms. Pure Sunfarms is located in Delta, BC. Now, as I said in my original review of Pure Sunfarms, this area is where I grew up, and I was excited to see what BC LPs were doing. Anyways, their flagship facility is located in a tiny place called Ladner. It's a heritage village with a population of 20,000, and it's here that they have possibly the world's largest cannabis greenhouse, coming in at over 1 million square feet of outdoor greenhouse space. And from that location, they're able to produce cannabis at a rate of 75,000 kilograms a year, at an all-in cost of just 80 cents per gram. By comparison, a company like Afria has a total all-in cost of about $1.69 per gram, and a company like Aurora refuses to even disclose those numbers. As low as that is, outdoor typically has an all-in cost of about 15 cents per gram, and it'll come down around 10 cents per gram as the market matures. Last year, Health Canada approved an additional 65,000 square feet of space in that same location. They use that space for processing edibles and concentrates. In the future, they're looking at adding additional greenhouses and doubling their grow space to 2 million square feet. They boasted about selling their very first order in under 3 weeks and rocketing into the top 10 category for cannabis sales. And who bought that product? The BCLDB, or BC Liquor Distribution Branch, all owned by the same folks as his previous employer, the LCBO. And who owns them? Why, your government, of course, and I'm sure there's no conflict of interest there, right? Pure Sunfarms is known as a low-cost, budget brand that's positioned to take on the black market. CEO Mandesh Dosanjh takes issue with the term budget brand. He says that they're not a value brand and that they're about producing quality at prices cannabis users are familiar with. That they're not cheap weed, it's just that the other LPs are trying to normalize high-priced weed. He went on to say, quote, "I don't know how you sell people products at a price point vastly different than they're used to, and I'm not sure why the other LPs did that. I couldn't agree more, Mandesh." He goes on to say that high-priced cannabis only helps illicit cannabis thrive, and that Pure Sunfarms prices are just set to a place Canadians are more familiar with paying. Mandesh also believes that there is too much focus on high THC content and points to trends in the US market that offer more balanced cultivars. In March of 2021, Mandesh filed a complaint to Health Canada about canopy growth. See, Health Canada requires THC and CBD levels to be reported on the packaging labels. However, Health Canada regulations don't set variability limits on flower, only edibles and concentrates. Health Canada says that potency can vary from plant to plant in a particular crop. Pure Sunfarms, once again using their BCLDB and OCS connections, looked at certificates of analysis turned in by Canopy Growth and compared them to the labels on their TWD brand flower. They found some suspicious discrepancies and concluded that the statistical likelihood of so many samples coming in at 20% is extremely low. Why 20%? Well, the LPs dump a bunch of money into researching more ways to make more money. One of the things they found was that Canadian cannabis consumers prefer, for better or worse, cannabis with a THC rating of 20% and up. So they try to put out products to meet that expectation. Currently, LPs collectively have over 1 billion grams of stored cannabis inventory that they believe is of insufficient quality and potency. Mandesh believes incorrectly labeled products will erode the customer's trust in LPs. He goes on to say that users of all levels should be able to dose themselves in a reliable way, and that accurate potency labels are one of those indicators. They can use those indicators to understand what effects it will have on them and help make an informed decision. And you know what they say, knowledge is power. One cool thing Pure Sunfarms does is that on their website you can put in a lot number from the package, and it will provide you with the full PDF of the lab results for the actual cannabis you purchased. This is fucking amazing. Although lab legitimacy and standards is a whole other conversation that's worth having. For their part in this, Canopy Growth says that their product meets a defined potency, and that the percentages on their labels are determined by a midpoint of a narrow range of historical data. That's a fancy way of saying they're bullshitting. Dosanjh wanted Health Canada to clear this up because it's not cheap to test specific lots and print a new label each time. That if 95% of the industry are misinterpreting that regulation, then they could save a lot of money. And they could make more money by fixing the numbers, since apparently 20% THC is what customers want. Then just this month, August 2021, Health Canada sent out letters doing just that. In a letter sent to LPs, they said that THC and CBD values should be reflective of the value tested for that lot. They also said that labeling practices that display THC and CBD values on labels that have not been obtained from testing of that particular lot number or batch could be found out of compliance. Dosanjh says those LPs are prioritizing profits over transparency. Imagine that. He went on to say that he was warned that Health Canada would never make this clear, and that LPs with deep pockets would get so many lawyers involved, it would be like kicking a hornet's nest and painting a bullseye on his back. He responded saying that ensuring consumer safety, transparency, and confidence in legal cannabis will never take a back seat to profits and popularity. So the question is, will Health Canada actually hold companies like Canopy Growth accountable for their actions? Remember, that letter said may be out of compliance, not will be. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, now let's take a look at that Blue Dream. Blue Dream is a very popular strain with a high rate of trichome production, so it's known to be very resinous. It appears to be new to the Pure Sunfarms lineup. Blue Dream is a sativa-dominant strain that is a cross between blueberry and haze. Among patients who prefer Kush varieties, Blue Dream is one of the most popular choices. It's known for its berry smells and flavors. Medical patients often use it for nausea, pain, and depression. Its terpene entourage is thought to prevent THC tolerance buildup. This sample tested at 16.1% THC and no CBD. Its top 3 listed terpenes are myrcene, pinene, and caryophyllene. So it should have notes of pepper, earthiness, and of course pine trees. Interestingly, pinene is a terpene that inhibits enzyme activity in the brain associated with aiding short-term memory. I purchased a 3.5 gram sample for $25 plus tax. That works out to around $7 a gram and $200 an ounce. Certainly not cheap. It came in a nice green Ziploc pouch and was dated April 2021. When you crack the seal, it smells pretty generic. Myrcene, maybe? I dumped the bag onto my clean rolling tray, and the buds were popcorn at best. The trim is pretty shaggy with lots of chunks of stem and leaf, and the flowers are mostly light green with sporadic red hairs. The eighth came in on point at 3.5 grams. Under the microscope, the trichomes were small and underdeveloped looking. They were fried and many missing trichome heads. Another issue was that, for the most part, they were clear, indicating an early harvest. They would do well to leave these plants a few more weeks to allow the trichomes to ripen before mangling them in an auto trimmer, then radiating the ever-loving fuck out of them. Unfortunately, that's not all I saw. I found several of those non-cannabis material fibers. This time I actually found 3 different colors: blue, black, and red. The red one seemed translucent and allowed light from my microscope to pass through it. They all seemed smooth and synthetic in my opinion. I gave the microscope to Robin to see, and she also found those fibers. I find it odd that the certificate of analysis said there was no foreign material found in the lot they tested, since I found several. This makes me question the other results from that lab. That lab is called LabSmart, and if you look up their employer reviews, you will see they are quite low rated with complaints of poor training and low standards. Testing companies are yet another separate important conversation, and they are known for corruption and payoffs. However, that certificate of analysis did confirm that my Blue Dream cannabis was in fact radiated. R.I.P. terps. Can I get a moment of silence for those trichome heads? The flowers were just this side of dry as fuck. So while they would crumble with my fingers, they didn't explode into fine powder. So they were slightly spongy, and while they would crumble with my fingers, they didn't explode into fine powder. There was very little smell even with your nose right up to the buds, and it was no better after I busted it up. Surprisingly, there was a slight sticky residue on my fingers after I broke it up. That never fucking happens. It was dry enough that it was kind of annoying to roll, as it was falling out of the ends and didn't stick together nicely. Of course, I weighed and rolled a 1-gram joint, as is standard for this podcast. Oh, I just about forgot. Right as I was about to twist it up, I noticed a pale, sad seed just staring back at me. This prompted a closer look and turned up another seed. Wow, I'm glad I caught those because I fucking hate the taste of burned seeds. Of course, seeds indicate most likely a stressed or hermid plant, but also possibly pollinated. It burned okay, but it canoed a little bit and had very little flavor. Gun to head and being generous, I'd say it was earthy if not a little bitter. The smoke didn't seem harsh, and the ash was a pretty decent looking light gray. For what it is, I gotta say that the high was a pleasant surprise. I don't know if my expectations were low given the THC percentage and the state of the trichome damage, and of course the early harvest, along with radiation, but the buzz was actually pretty impressive. Nothing knock you on your ass or anything, but a decent high that was better than most I try. It also seemed to last longer than most as well. But I can't help but wonder if the effect is from the weed or the tricolored microfibers I saw under the microscope. I'd also like to try it fully ripe and unradiated. Overall, this LP has a lot going for it. I wanted to re-review Pure Sunfarms because the first time I was sold year-old, dusty, dry mystery weed. I made sure to check the date before I bought it this time, and he told me that discounted weed is usually old stock. Good to know, but they didn't tell me that when I bought it. And no one wants year-old weed, no matter how cheap it is. Overall, this sample looked better and was much fresher. However, the certificate of analysis assured me that foreign matter was absent. I saw foreign matter with my own eyes, which makes you question all the other results. Of course, I don't know how large samples sent into labs for testing are, but if I had fibers in my eighth, then surely there's more. So hopefully they can kick quality assurance in the ass and fix that in the future. And drop the radiation. You could do worse than this for sure, and if you're in a pinch, you might test your luck. But compete with the legacy market at $200 an ounce? You're fucking dreaming. Thanks for listening to another episode of Man vs. Weed. You know the deal. Like, subscribe, share it on social media. Every little bit helps and is completely free and relatively effortless. Follow me on Twitter at StreetVillain. Email me at manversusweedthc@gmail.com. Get higher than the price of legal cannabis and free the weed.